A dual citizen of both Russia and the United States has been named the Goodwill Ambassador to the United States by the Russian Foreign Ministry. This man's name is Steven Seagal. You might be familiar with Steven Seagal. He's one of those action movie stars from an earlier age when movies were actually fun. The Russian Foreign Ministry had this to say: "The task is to facilitate relations between Russia and the United States in the humanitarian field, including cooperation in culture, arts, public and youth exchanges, and so on. It is the case when people's diplomacy meets halfway, traditional diplomacy." It is an interesting story to start off the day, the idea that Steven Seagal officially works on behalf of the Russian government to improve relations between the United States and Russia. Maybe we can have Seagal start another TV show, or maybe a Netflix-produced movie, since they seem a bit desperate for content these days. Just think about it. With today's technology, we can make Steven Seagal movies just like they once were, as they should be. Action movies have been stale for so long, and maybe we can work together with the Russians to make better action movies. Think about it. What brings people together more than making movies? If you didn't know, Steven Seagal is apparently close friends with Vladimir Putin and even received Russian citizenship in 2016, getting his passport directly from Vladimir Putin in front of the media. Kind of a weird publicity stunt, but considering Seagal's past, it's not too surprising. In 2013, when Seagal was 60 years old, he was deputized by the Doña Ana County Sheriff's Office in southern New Mexico, and he even had a television show that ran for a while where his show worked as a sort of Dog the Bounty Hunter spinoff. Whatever you might think of Russia, or Steven Seagal for that matter, I think we could agree that this appointment of theirs to Steven Seagal could be good in the long run. I think that a lot of people like Steven Seagal, even if he got Me Too'd, and his voice could potentially bring people together. Besides the accusations during the Me Too hysteria having no evidence other than the words of two people, they also had Lisa Bloom representing these two women. Seagal denied claims against him, saying that people were being paid to spread false information about him. Considering the person behind the women as well as the absence of physical evidence, I'm not really convinced. There must be something of more substance, something a little bit more tangible if you plan on making these types of allegations against people, especially a man who is now about 65 years old. When things like this happen, it makes it appear as though there is a cash grab, especially in these past few years. I have learned to not believe everything you hear. You might remember Sarah Jeong, the newest addition to the New York Times editorial board and contributor to the technology section, and her tweets that went viral following her hiring. BBC came forward to hold her to her own standards. Wait, what's that? Oh, never mind. They actually edited the article to add in quotation marks. They changed the article to make it clear that these are only allegations. What has been most entertaining to me about all of this is the clear hypocrisy, though I'm sure you aren't surprised by that by now. The same people who said that Trump's comments on the Access Hollywood tapes were so important and you should be outraged are now coming forward to defend comments made years ago. And it's not just for Sarah Jeong, but many others that spoke the unspeakable and tried to play it off as if it was some kind of joke. Keep in mind, making any sort of joke at the expense of the LGT, LMNOP++, or any of the other forbidden topics is not okay, but the comments against white people are always allowed at any time. In fact, I don't know if you've heard, but she's the actual victim here. Replace the word white with black, and this woman would have been ran out of the public sphere, and these same people coming to her defense would be condemning her. The mental gymnastics has been nothing short of impressive. However, when the word is white and not black, hey, let's send that person through Harvard. Let's hand them a prestigious job at the New York Times, a once somewhat respected news outlet. Now, however, they hold a level of credibility close to that of the Weekly World News. Seeing this article on BBC get edited to add quotations in order to undermine their original article is proof that the BBC is just as much of a joke as the New York Times itself. Considering how much the BBC covered for Jimmy Savile and how Mark Thompson went on to work at the New York Times after covering for him at the BBC, neither of these outlets have a single ethical belief among them, at least in my opinion. Here's a new one for you guys that you might find interesting. I'm sure you guys remember everything that has been banned from the UK. Oi, you gotta have a license for that. Well, it turns out that things are worse than we originally imagined. A roofer named Stuart Gosling had chip bags and water bottles in his van, obviously not wanting to litter, and instead kept the rubbish with the intention of throwing it a little bit later. However, he was pulled over by council workers for a spot check. This is from the Daily Mail article. The roofing contractor was driving through Chingford in northeast London when he was pulled over by Waltham Forest Council workers. They searched his vehicle before asking him if he had a waste carrier's license required by any business that transports commercial refuse. He has tried to appeal the fine but has been told that he will end up in court if he doesn't pay the penalty issued at the roadside. Now that is something. You aren't even allowed to hold onto your trash in order to throw it away later. You're also not allowed to toss it out the window. Or do you have a license for that trash? Or do you have a license to throw away that trash? This is a joke. Was this a last-ditch effort by the council worker to find something wrong with the guy to give out a BS fine? I just can't imagine anybody on either side of the political spectrum thinking that this is okay. It's not just me, right? This is a joke. The UK is even more laughable than it was before, which is saying something. I don't know. Maybe it is just me.